If we are actually having a Christian revival, is this a good thing or is it in fact dangerous? Let's see what Alex has to say about this.
And using the context that I'm putting forward here. Also, it makes a good opener for an article, so I'm going to do it anyway.
Why is this happening? What has occurred recently that's caused Christianity, cultural Christianity, this sort of revival of it, utilitarian Christianity, if you want to call it that, which I quite like as a term?
Yeah, there are a few things for this, functional, utilitarian, practical Christianity that isn't an affirmative set of truth claims, but rather a sort of protective cloak to be worn.
It's more like Stoicism.
It's a cultural thing, yeah. The cultural Christian. I mean, think of Richard Dawkins. Loves going to Evensong, likes a cathedral, thinks that God doesn't exist, and that the Christian stories are ludicrous fantasies. This is your cultural Christian. Why are they beginning to reemerge in droves? For a few reasons. First, new atheism either creates or describes this vacuum of spiritual ungroundedness. You don't need any of this religion stuff. I know that it's obviously evolved in the human psyche for some reason. And every single human society we find, doesn't matter where we look, they all have some kind of sense of the numinous, some kind of distinction between the sacred and the profane. Numinous, the sort of, you could say the transcendent, something that sort of sits above and beyond, a little bit sort of mystical, a little bit sort of out there. When you ask somebody if they're religious and they say, no, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. And you're like, what the hell does that mean? And they're like, I just sort of believe in like something. So, well, I believe in this microphone, I believe it exists. So what do you mean? But they're sort of getting at this sort of ethereal other, this something, right? And every society, wherever we look, societies develop this feeling. And that there's clearly something intrinsic to human nature that drives us towards this religious impulse. But the new atheists come along, as the old atheists did before them, but the new atheists did it more fervently in saying, no, not only is this untrue, not only in the sort of, where Sigmund Freud says that your belief in God is, I don't know, the result of some kind of childhood repression, trauma, whatever, okay, but he's still going to think that it's an intrinsic part of the human psyche, right? The new atheists come along and say, well, I also think it's false, but you also don't need it. You don't need this celestial dictator telling you what to do. Oh, you only do right and wrong because you're scared of upsetting the big man in the sky. Well, that's a terrible source for ethics. And everyone goes, yeah, damn right, yeah. Yeah, and it's sort of like a rallying cry. Like it was really, some of these speeches, especially in the case of Christopher Hitchens, they sort of make you want to stand up and give a round of applause. I mean, it's just amazing, right? And part of it is appealing to this human, this sort of like humanity, this common humanity. Oh, like, are you not good enough yourself to sort of stand up and live a good life and all of this kind of stuff? And everyone's like, yeah, absolutely. But we've seen the fruits of this as people begin to sort of throw off religion and societies begin to throw off religion. What people have perceived happening is the creation of a spiritual vacuum. And if it is the case that human beings are naturally religious, they have an impulse towards, the most fundamental thing I think we have an impulse towards is the idea of the sacred, the idea of something which is separate and untouchable, that shouldn't be mixed with the profane. That shouldn't be, that usually has a sort of attached to it a set of dogma about rules, what you're allowed to do with it, what you're not, and those rules aren't entirely justified by reason alone. It's sort of considered to be self-evident, just this separate thing that we treat as totally sacred. So that's your God, right? And the idea is that if you remove the God, something else has to fulfill that place, something has to fill it in. And so the right-wing conservatives will say that environmentalism, veganism, gender ideology, all of this kind of stuff has become a new religion. And although it's maybe a bit of a lazy phrasing, you know what they mean. You know exactly the kind of thing that they're talking about, right? And the left will criticize, nationalism as filling that role. Populism and populist leaders, people get religious about Donald Trump, which they do. It's amazing to sort of see the power and influence that man has. It's almost spiritual, So to cut a long story short, or to append a long story with a conclusion, I should say, I think what's happening is a bunch of right-wing thinkers are seeing what is fulfilling the vacuum that new atheism created. Wokeism, Islamism, a few other things, which there's someone in particular that I should mention. And they're saying, I don't like this. And they're realizing that the kind of secular humanism that's promised by the new atheists just kind of isn't cutting the mustard seed, as I like to say. It's not doing it. So I recently was in New York and I watched Richard Dawkins and Ayaan Hirsi Ali have a discussion. Ayaan Hirsi Ali was supposed to be at the meeting.
Okay, so as Alex is saying, one of the things that has led to this growth of Christianity is this lack of moral grounding that we're seeing in our society today, right? This whole notion that there is no truth, right? People don't really know what to really believe. They don't have a beacon that says, look, this is true, this is not, this is wrong, and this is right. And because this is going on in our society, people are now craving, right, for that grounding, right? That framework that will tell you, hey, this is moral, this is not moral, this is right, this is wrong. And this desire, it's what's leading to this increase in Christian sympathy is not the right word, but positive outlook that we're seeing today. And this leads to a discussion on, faith and works, right? Some people really do believe that they are a Christian as long as they're doing Christian-like things, right? I can do Christian-like things and not have to believe in this whole Jesus stuff, and I am a Christian. And this is completely and utterly wrong, right? Because the Bible clearly states that in order for you to be saved, in order for you to be a follower of Christ, you must first believe in who he claimed to be, that he was the Son of God, that he died and rose from the dead, and that he paid for those sins on the cross. Without this, you could never be a Christian. Now, Jesus does say, those that love me obey my commandments. So this true faith will lead to good works. This is how you know that you are a Christian. In fact, the Bible says, by their works, you will know them. I'm not saying that the good things that you do will save you, but the natural progression of your faith will be that now you are instituting all of the things that Jesus taught while he was here on earth. And this is where the danger comes in, because we could potentially have a lot of people that think that they're saved, that think that they're Christian, because they're simply doing the right things. And it's not just about doing the right things. It's about placing your faith in the right person of Jesus Christ. Romans 12:2 says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Then you will be able to test and prove what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. And that's an interesting question, isn't it? Because Paul is telling us here, do not conform to the patterns of the world. But what if the patterns of the world start resembling what God would have us do? I think ultimately that is a good thing, but again, it can lead to the falsehood, that false belief that you are saved, that you're truly a Christian when you are not. Now, this is not all dangerous. I think that in this time, this could be a good opportunity to take hold, right, of this new renewed engagement that we're having from people as Christians. Grab hold of them and really teach them what it means to be a Christian, what it means to truly be a follower of Christ. Now, while this could be a dangerous time for us, it could also be a time of great opportunity to be able to reach more souls for the kingdom. This actually reminds me of the last chapter of the story of Joseph, right? Joseph, in this time, he is the most blessed that he will ever be, right? Because he is at the top of the food chain when it comes to the Egyptian power, right? He was up there. He had great favor with Pharaoh. A lot of people look at the story and they're like, yeah, like he's being blessed. Now, while this is the case, we have to remember that it's also a very dangerous place for him to be in. Because remember, at this time, he is in a foreign nation. He is actually also even married to a foreign wife that does not know the God that he serves. So again, we see this blessing, but at the same time, we see the danger that could be there because he could be led astray. Although in the story itself, we know that this doesn't happen because he requests that when he dies, his bones are taken to the promised land. And we actually hear in Exodus that this is what ultimately happens. So is this all doom and gloom? No. I think that ultimately this is a great opportunity, but we need to be careful, right? In these times, we really want to engage with those people that are starting to follow the Christian lifestyle in the Christian walk and really help them have a relationship with Christ and to understand what that means. All right, guys. Well, I hope that you found this helpful. And as always, just want to remind you that we must persevere. Peace.